What's up everybody, and welcome back to the Cyclonic Thrift channel. Today we're looking at yet another commander from the new Modern Horizons 3 set release. And this one takes me back to my roots a little bit. I am a Landfall sucker, and this card takes Landfall in a fun new direction actually. So I'm excited to see this play out here. It's none other than the Necrobloom. It's 1 an Abzan, so a white, a black, and a green for a 2/7. A 2/7 for some reason. Legendary creature plant. Has landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, you create a 0/1 green plant creature token. Then, if you control 7 or more lands with different names, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token instead. So, this is a token generation. We're creating a lot of plants, but it has some Field of the Dead shenanigans as well if you decide to go wide with your land types. We definitely have 7 or more lands with different names in this deck. To be honest, I didn't really build it that way. I'm really more focused on just churning out a lot of little tokens, and the plants work just as well as the zombies in that sense. And then it also has land cards in your graveyard have dredge too. So dredge is an ability where if a card has dredge, it means you can return that card to your hand from your graveyard and then mill a number of cards equal to the amount associated with that dredge. So for dredge 2, whenever you would draw a card, so you could do it at the beginning of your turn, instead of drawing that card, you return a land from your graveyard to your hand and then mill 2 cards. So it's a way to fill up your graveyard. It's a way to return cards from your graveyard to your hand. In this instance, it's just going to be our land cards, but that's okay. We want to play those lands anyway to get the plant tokens and keep our graveyard full, because we're going to have a lot of ways to take advantage of that graveyard in this deck. So we're going to talk about a lot of cards that help fill our graveyard up, a lot of milling, and a lot of cards that help give us some advantage when we mill. So the first is Glowspore Shaman. It's a black and a green for a 3/1 creature elf shaman. When it enters the battlefield, you mill 3 cards, and then you can put a land card from your graveyard on top of your library. So there's a way to kind of fix your draw if you want. You don't have to return that land to your library, but milling those cards is going to be really nice. And it's a 3-power creature. You get down pretty early, so it can be a pretty helpful blocker. Old Rutstein is a 1, a black, and a green for a 1/4 legendary creature human peasant. When it enters the battlefield or at the beginning of your upkeep, you mill a card. If a land card is milled, you create a treasure token. If a creature card is milled, you create a 1/1 insect. And if a non-creature, non-land card is milled, you create a blood token. So this is, again, just a way to continually, repeatably fill your graveyard up, but to gain a little bit of value no matter what you end up milling. So it can either ramp you a little bit with the treasures, it can create those insect tokens, again, that token strategy that we're already trying to fulfill with the Necrobloom. Or it can get you a blood token, which would be kind of like an incidental card draw sort of thing. So no matter what you mill off this guy, it's going to be really nice, and he fits just super well into the theme of what we're trying to do. And then we've got Screeching Scorch Beast, 4 and 2 black for a 5/5 creature bat mutant. It's got flying and menace. Whenever it attacks, each player gets 2 rad counters. And then whenever 1 or more non-land cards are milled, you may create that many 2/2 zombie mutant creature tokens. And you do this only once each turn. So, yeah. So this is it. It's an expensive card, 6 mana. It's going to take a while to get down. But when you attack and repeatedly give people rad counters, and then they're milling on their turns, you're going to be creating a ton of zombies, right? Because if they don't mill a land card, or if they mill a non-land card, you're going to create zombies, and they get rid of those rad counters. But if they mill land cards, they're going to keep those rad counters. So over the course of the game, you're either going to continue to damage them and mill important cards from them, or you're going to be creating a lot of zombies. Again, it fits really well into the token creature generation theme. It's going to be really nice in this deck. We also have a lot of those, classic landfall cards, cards that fit well into the strategy, but also kind of scratch the itch of wanting to get value when we play our lands. First is Roaring Earth. It's 1 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature or vehicle you control. Then it has Channel, so you can pay X and 2 green to discard it, and you put X +1/+1 counters on target land you control, and becomes a 0/0 green spirit creature with haste, and it's still a land. So whether you get this beginning of the game or late in the game, it can have some utility, and it'd be nice. Trove Warden, 2 and 2 white for a 3/4 creature cat beast. It has Vigilance. Landfall, whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, exile target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard. And then when Trove Warden dies, you put each permanent card exiled with it onto the battlefield under your control. So this is a great way to, again, utilize our graveyard. We're going to be filling it up with our mill. And so we can hide away, basically, lands, creatures, small creatures, right? Artifacts, enchantments, all that fun stuff under Trove Warden. And then eventually, if a board wipe happens, or we want to sacrifice Trove Warden because we feel like we've got enough value out of it, we're going to be getting all of those permanent cards back in one fell swoop, and can create a pretty impactful turn, actually. So Trove Warden, I like it. I like it a lot in this spot. Then we've got Rampaging Balos, just classic landfall card. It's 4 and 2 green for a 6/6 creature beast with trample. And then whenever land enters battlefield under your control, you create a 4/4 green beast creature token. Plays into the creature token theme as well, landfall theme, all of the above. It's a perfect fit. And then finally, I just want to talk about a few more cards that fit well into the token generation theme. Again, we're going to be trying to go wide here with a ton of plants, a ton of zombies from Screeching Scorch Beast, a ton of beasts, all that good stuff. So cards like Felidar Retreat, 3 and a white for an enchantment. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you choose 1. Either we can create a 2/2 cat beast creature token, or we can put a +1/+1 counter on each creature we control. And those creatures gain Vigilance until end of turn. So if it's the beginning of the game, we don't have much of a board presence yet, we can create those cats and just build up our wide army. But if it's late in the game, we already have those creatures made, got a ton of plants from Necrobloom, then we can just pump them to the moon by adding those +1/+1 counters. So there's a lot of flexibility here, a lot of versatility, no matter where you are in the course of a game. Next we got Izoni, Center of the Web. It's 4, a black and a red for a 5/4 legendary creature elf detective. Has Menace, and whenever Izoni, Center of the Web, enters the battlefield or attacks, you may collect evidence 4. And if you do, create 2 2/1 black and green spider creature tokens with Menace and Reach. Then you can sacrifice 4 tokens to surveil 2, then draw 2 cards, and you gain 2 life. So, 1, it's going to be generating a lot of creatures. The reach on those creatures is super helpful. Those spiders having a way to block flyers against you. And then the second ability where we can sacrifice tokens to do some shenanigans with our graveyard, drawing cards, all that good stuff. We're going to have a lot of tokens, and if we're not in a position to swing out and kill somebody with it, then might as well turn them into some value. And then finally we got Vault 12, the Necropolis. It's 4 and 2 black for a saga. The first chapter is each player gets 3 rad counters. Again, those rad counters are going to be super critical in milling ourselves, but also interfering with our opponent's plans and getting rid of some cards. Second chapter is create X 2/2 black zombie mutant creature tokens, where X is the total number of rad counters among players. So presuming they get rid of a few over the course of their turn, but by the time it comes back to us, maybe we still get 6 or so creatures out of this. This is going to be really nice. And then the third chapter is put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control that's a zombie or mutant. So, we create all these zombies and then pump them up on this turn. At this point, we're able to attack with them, so, they're at least 4/4s, if not bigger. This will be a really nice way to get a lot of damage in on your opponents. That brings us to the vegetable portion of today's deck. For those who haven't seen the channel before, vegetable portion is where I talk about a few categories of cards that are just absolutely crucial to having a smooth running, consistent deck. Those categories are ramp, card draw, and removal, and you you absolutely have to fill each of these categories out with plenty of cards, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to play consistently enough against decks that are higher budget and higher powered than yours. So in the ramp category, we've got Arcane Signet, 2 mana for an artifact. You tap to add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. You've got Shigeki, Jukai Visionary, 1 and a green for a 1/3 legendary enchantment creature, Snake Druid. You pay 1 and a green to tap and return Shigeki to your hand. Reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield tapped, and the rest into your graveyard. And then it also has a channel ability where you can discard it and return a certain number of cards from your graveyard to your hand, which in a mill strategy is also relevant. This is going to be really helpful. Then we've got Harold and Bob, First Newmans, 2 and a green for a 3/3 legendary creature, Treefolk Mutant, Vigilance and Reach. And when Harold and Bob die, if it was a creature, return it to the battlefield. And it's an aura enchantment with Enchant Forest you control, and Enchantment Forest has tap and add 3 mana of any one color, and you get 2 rad counters. And then it loses all of their abilities. So this, it doesn't really do a ton on its own in the actual creature form, but if we find a way to kill it, block something with it, and it dies, it can turn one of our forests into an absolute powerhouse. It's tapping for 3 mana. We're getting rad counters, so we're milling cards. You definitely want to get it on that second mode as fast as possible. But once you do, it's gonna bring a lot of value over the course of the next few turns. Moving on to card draw, we've got Tireless Tracker, 2 and a green for a 3/2 creature Human Scout. It's got Landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, you investigate, so you create a clue. And then whenever you sacrifice a clue, you put a +1/+1 counter on Tyler's Tracker. You've got Foster, 2 and 2 green for an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control dies, you may pay 1. And if you do, you reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that card into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. So it's card draw for only creatures, understand that. But the upside is it doesn't say whenever a non-token creature you control dies. So all of our 0/1 plants, we can kind of turn into pay 1 mana and draw a creature card. And the rest of those cards go into our graveyard. If they went back to the bottom of our library, this becomes a much worse card in this deck. But because we're trying to fill up our graveyard anyway, being able to do this, get a creature into our hand, and fill up our graveyard is kind of a 2-for-1 piece that for 1 mana and a plant dying is well worth the cost. Then we got Furja, Judge of Valor. It's 2, a white and 2 black for a 2/4 legendary creature Angel Cleric, flying and lifelink. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Hitting 2 spells in Commander is super easy. We're going to easily be able to trigger this on every one of our turns. Gives us a lot of card selection instead of just, hoping what we get off the top of the deck is what we need. We kind of get to be able to pick and choose a little bit. We can make some strategic decisions about what we want in our hand and what we want into our graveyard. This is going to be really nice. In terms of removal, pretty classic. We've got Path to Exile. It's 1 white for an instant. You exile a target creature, and its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. We've got Reclamation Sage, 2 and a green for a 2/1 creature Elf Shaman. When it enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. And then Broken Bond, 1 and a green for a sorcery. You destroy target artifact or enchantment, and then you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So all these are pretty straightforward, pretty classic, cheap ways to kind of get what we want, but also easily recurable in case we want to repeat the effect later. And that brings us to the Thrift pick of the deck. For those of you who haven't seen the channel before, the Thrift pick is the card that I am super excited to see in play. Might not be the best card, it might not be the most expensive, the most powerful objectively even, but it's a card that when I was building the deck, saw it and I just fell in love with it. I just want to see it on the battlefield. I want to see it mess some people up. And that card for this deck is actually pretty on theme. It's called Strong, the Brutish Thespian. 4 and 2 green for a legendary creature, Mutant Berserker, 7/7. It's got Ward 2. Whenever it's dealt damage, you get 3 rad counters, and you put 3 +1/+1 counters on this card. And then you gain life rather than lose life from radiation. So 2 things here. 1, it's a massive beater. It's going to be an excellent blocker. It's got Ward 2, so it's going to be really hard for your opponents to remove or deal with. And 2, there's enough radiation counter synergy in this deck that having that second line there where we're gaining life instead of losing life is relevant. You know, if we only had 1 or 2 cards that cared about rad counters, then that second line kind of becomes useless. But because we're planning on having some radiation at any point, any particular point in these games, just having that extra added ability is going to be really nice. So ultimately, it's a big beater. It's going to get even bigger. It's going to give you radiation so you can mill more cards into your graveyard. It's a perfect fit into this deck. And with that, brings us to the end of this deck. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, like the video, comment down below. Let me know if there's any cards that you know you absolutely would include in this deck that you think I might have missed. Go ahead, check out the full deck list on Archidect. The link is in the description. If you're not already, please subscribe to the channel. And until next time, stay safe and stay thrifty.